Very excited to have a very special guest with us on the Try Not to Die podcast. It's none other than my brother from another mother.
That's me.
Ozzy Osbourne.
That is true, a brother from another mother.
Yeah.
I'm 10 years older than Jack.
Yes, I know that.
So,
So he knew Dad in a time that I didn't know my dad.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I knew Dad in a time when Dad probably didn't even know who Dad was. He was always away on tour a lot from when I was a kid.
If you think you know what it feels like to lose someone, think again, because watching the world turn up for your father in ways you never imagined changes everything. Louis Osbourne, the eldest son of Ozzy Osbourne, recently opened up about an experience that left him stunned, humbled, and in awe. And it's a story that perfectly captures the kind of impact his father had, not just on music, but on life itself.
Cool.
Do you remember going to Sabbath concerts back then?
I don't remember
Must have
going
been
to
too young,
Sabbath
no?
concert. I do remember Sabbath rehearsing in that space and watching and listening to them there. And the neighbours complaining.
Imagine expecting a small, quiet crowd of maybe 2 or 3 people deep lining the streets of your hometown, only to turn a corner and see waves of humanity stretching as far as the eye can see, people climbing lampposts, hanging out of windows, balancing on bus stops, just to catch a glimpse of a man they loved, respected, and admired. That's what Louis walked into in Birmingham, England, when the city came alive to honor the life and death of the Prince of Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne. In his rare interview on his half-brother Jack's podcast, Louis described the sensation as humbling, and it's hard not to feel that word resonate when you picture the scale of devotion and raw emotion that met him that day. The crowd wasn't there for a headline or a performance, they were there for a legacy, a life that had touched millions in ways that words can barely contain.
I was laughing with Kelly about this the other day, because I'm 10 years older, but I'm still a kid. And Dad would always say to me, don't be so rough with them. You'll end up hurting them. And I wasn't going out to.
I remember him saying that.
Yeah, that is
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. It wasn't my intention to hurt them. But
That's really funny. That's
I felt
very
like what
funny.
you were doing. We were sitting the day roughing him up. I'd
Yeah.
just be like picking, fucking him on the couch, and,
That's
and then
amazing.
I'd go too far, and they'd cry, and Dad'd come and fucking give me a bollocking, and I'd be upset then. But it was funny. It was just, it was funny. It was quite entertaining.
People weren't just on the streets, they were on rooftops, clinging to lampposts, leaning out of windows, desperate to be part of something historic, something larger than themselves, and Louis, who still lives in Birmingham, was seeing it all with fresh eyes that had grown up with Ozzy as just Dad, not as the global icon whose music defined a generation and changed culture forever. He admitted he knew people loved his father, but he had no real sense of how deep or how vast that love was, and when he watched it unfold in real time, he was overwhelmed, humbled, and completely in awe.
Volume of people at the cortege. I mean, the show was hugely emotional. We were having a good old cry together at one point.
Yeah.
I just thought it was going to be like 2 or 3 people deep for like half a kilometre before where the Black Sabbath bridge was, and it would be a throng. As we came towards the street and turned onto the street, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it now. Like, it was fucking insane. Like, people climbing up lampposts, hanging out of windows, standing on top of bus stops to get a look of it. It was awe-inspiring.
There's something almost indescribable about seeing the life of someone you've known your whole life reflected back to you through the eyes of thousands of strangers, and Louis felt that deeply.
I knew people loved him, but I didn't have a sense of how many and how much, really, is what I would say. It's been quite humbling in many, many ways.
He also spoke about realizing the massive cultural impact his father had, the way Ozzy's music, personality, and style had influenced countless people, shaped entire genres, and inspired generations of musicians. And suddenly the legend he had grown up with wasn't just his father, he was a cultural icon whose reach stretched far beyond what Louis had ever imagined.
It's a weird thing, and I've only really realised this since his passing relatively recently, is that, like, I've always known how cool my dad is, right, but just not quite how fucking cool. And it's really kind of hit me since he's gone that, like...
But I think a lot of people have that.
And it wasn't just the funeral procession that left him stunned, it was the farewell concert back to the beginning, where musicians who had been inspired by Ozzy, including James Hetfield of Metallica and Guns N' Roses' Axl Rose, came to pay their respects backstage, some of whom Ozzy had never even met before. And the thought of all these incredible artists gathering to honor his father in one place, sharing the same stage in the same moment, left Louis in awe. He laughed, recounting that maybe it was for the best that Ozzy and Axl never met in the 80s, because with both of their energies combined at that time, who knows what could have happened. But underneath the jokes was a profound recognition that his father had touched lives in ways he himself was only beginning to understand, that his father's influence was so wide and deep that it drew legends together to celebrate him in ways that felt almost sacred.
The bad thing, I was just kind of like, oh, whatever. You know, there was that time when he and your mum had that altercation and he ended up in the clink. That was a bad one. That wasn't bad press. And, you know, your mum came up, your mum actually came up and picked us up from school and took us out and spoke to us about that. And just reassured us that everything's going to be all right.
Did you get bullied at school for it?
Never.
Yeah, see, I did.
Did you?
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you?
No way.
Yeah.
Why?
It was just kind of like a nah thing. It wasn't like a...
It's because you look like that, or no?
Maybe.
Louis' reflections also reveal the strange paradox of growing up as the child of a superstar. At home, he knew his father as a parent, someone ordinary, someone familiar, someone human, but the world had always seen something larger, something extraordinary. And now, in witnessing that global outpouring of love and admiration, he could finally reconcile the two realities, the intimate and the monumental. The streets of Birmingham became a living, breathing testament to Ozzy's impact, and Louis felt that weight, that awe, and that gratitude in a way that was deeply personal and deeply moving. And it wasn't just about fame or recognition, it was about connection, about understanding the resonance of a life lived boldly, unapologetically, and creatively. It was about seeing the ripples of influence that spread from one man's voice, one man's music, one man's presence, and realizing how many lives had been shaped, comforted, inspired, or transformed in some way by the energy Ozzy Osbourne brought into the world. Louis's story also reminds us of the power of perspective, how sometimes you don't see the magnitude of someone's life until you're suddenly confronted with it from the outside, until you see the faces of strangers who have been touched in profound ways by the person you've always known as a family member. And there's a universal truth in that, something every viewer can relate to. Sometimes we underestimate the impact we have on others, sometimes we don't fully grasp how far our actions, words, or creations reach, and sometimes it takes a moment of reflection, or a massive public tribute, or even loss, to see it clearly. Louis' description of people climbing lampposts, standing on bus stops, leaning out of windows, all just to be part of his father's farewell, creates this cinematic image that pulls you in, makes you feel part of the moment, and reminds you that real emotion can't be staged, it can't be faked, and it doesn't need to be dramatized. It exists naturally in the hearts of people who care deeply. And yet for Louis, it wasn't just about witnessing the world's love for his father, it was about understanding the responsibility, the inheritance, and the legacy left behind. He acknowledged that he didn't take his father's fame and success for granted, that growing up inside that world sometimes masks the true scale of what someone has accomplished, and that finally seeing it all laid bare before him, he could appreciate not just Ozzy the father, but Ozzy the legend. And there's a powerful lesson in that for all of us. Often we are surrounded by greatness in our personal lives, by people whose contributions are monumental, by friends or family members whose impact is vast. But because familiarity dulls perspective, we don't always see it. It takes reflection, it takes stepping outside ourselves, and sometimes it takes a public moment like the streets of Birmingham on that day to fully grasp it. Louis also shared that his experience backstage at the farewell concert, watching musicians pay tribute, was eye-opening, not just in terms of recognizing his father's influence, but also in seeing the human side of his peers. The way these artists, many of whom are legends themselves, approached Ozzy with respect, admiration, and humility, creating an atmosphere that was both celebratory and deeply emotional. And the emotional weight of all this, the crowds, the concert, the reflections, reveals a side of the Osbournes that the public rarely sees. The children who grew up in the shadow of a legend, learning how to navigate grief and pride simultaneously, processing a lifetime of exposure to fame while trying to retain the intimacy of family, and ultimately realizing that some experiences are so overwhelming, so profound, that they transform your understanding of who someone was, who they are, and what they meant to the world. And yet, despite the enormity of these experiences, Louis speaks with clarity, humor, and relatability, grounding the story in the human reality of loss, remembrance, and awe, which makes it easy for viewers to connect, to imagine themselves in his shoes, and to reflect on the people in their own lives whose impact might be similarly underappreciated. The beauty of Louis' account lies not just in the spectacle of thousands showing up for Ozzy, but in the way he interprets it, processes it, and shares it, creating a narrative that's informative, emotional, and inspiring, reminding us that legacies aren't measured solely in fame or fortune, but in the lives touched, the hearts moved, and the love that continues to ripple long after someone is gone. And when you combine all of these elements, the intimate perspective of a son, the massive public tribute, the musical legends paying homage, and the personal reflections on family, impact, and gratitude, you get a story that is both grand and personal, dramatic and relatable, fast-paced and deeply emotional, capturing the essence of what it means to grow up with and say goodbye to someone extraordinary. Louis Osbourne's words give us a glimpse into a world most of us can only imagine, showing how personal grief intersects with global admiration, how fame intersects with family, and how witnessing the depth of someone's influence can change the way you see them forever. It's a reminder that the people we love, admire, and even take for granted sometimes have a far greater impact than we realize, and that understanding, appreciating, and honoring that impact is a journey that can be as humbling as it is beautiful. And at the heart of this story is not just Ozzy, not just Louis, not just the thousands who lined the streets of Birmingham, but the universal human experience of love, loss, reflection, and awe, the way we are all touched by greatness in ways both seen and unseen, and how moments like these force us to stop, take it in, and feel the magnitude of a life well lived. And that's the story of Louis Osbourne confronting the scale of his father's legacy, seeing firsthand the waves of love his father inspired, and sharing it in a way that is heartfelt, emotional, and utterly compelling, reminding all of us that legends are not just remembered for their music, their fame, or their wild moments, but for the deep, lasting, and immeasurable impact they have on the world, on the people around them, and on the hearts of those lucky enough to witness it. Thank you for watching.